to me is learn how to use the equipment in the chamber. The first duty is the appointment of our Vice Chairman for the forthcoming civic year. Do we have any nominations? Norma.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Rosemary Bolton.
Thank you. A seconder?
I'd like to second that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any other nominees? Looking around, there aren't. Okay, well, thank you very much. Rosemary, would you come and join us? Welcome. Yes. Yes. Welcome to another year as Vice Chairman. Whilst we do that, can we just receive and note any apologies? Do we have any apologies? No apologies this evening? I think we are missing somebody, but I can't place who it might be. Okay, that's fine. Chairman's announcements, just to welcome you back. It's been a long time. It feels strangely familiar, though, and I, for one, am very pleased to be back in the chamber, and I hope you are too. Are there any declarations of interest? I heard a phone going off then. Could we just silence any devices that might disturb us? Thank you. No declarations of interest. Would you join with me then in approving the minutes of the meetings of the committee meeting held on the Wednesday the 10th of March of this year? And could we have a proposer and seconder, please? Proposed, thank you. Thank you, David. Seconded, David. And the several licensing committee meetings, 29th of March and the 6th of April, the licensing subcommittee meetings. Again, if we can take them on block, a proposer and seconder, please. Content with that, David Snowden, seconded by the Vice Chairman. Thank you very much. Into the business of the substantive business of the day. Item 7, consideration of the responses to the consultation on the draft revision of the Statement of Licensing Policy. I, for one, was very interested in this, and I think it's a good bit of work. Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. As the members of the committee know, each licensing authority is required to adopt and publish a Statement of Licence Policy at least every 5 years. It's an important document that sets out the principles the local authority will apply when carrying out its licensing functions under the Licensing Act 2003. Members will be aware that there was extensive work carried out in the drafting of the policy, and I personally would like to thank all those that contributed: residents, businesses, licence holders, members. There was a lot of input at early stage so that the draft was comprehensive from the start. The main changes in the draft Statement of Licensing Policy include a new section on pre-application advice and engagement, licensing hours, so a revised premises definition and timing section. The town centre section was revised with locations and introduction of a sensitive licensing area in Hertford. There's a revised section on the stakeholder engagement and representations, and a revised section on enforcement and inspection. Much of this was initially in the nighttime position statement that was approved by Licensing Committee in 2018. That document's now been incorporated into the Statement of Licensing Policy. During the consultation on the draft revision of the policy, 7 responses were received, and these are all contained in the appendices of the report and came from a variety of stakeholders, including Parish Council, Town Council, a premises licence holder, 3 responsible authorities and the Hertfordshire Modern Slavery Partnership. At paragraph 3.7 of the report, there is a table containing the officer's suggested amendments to the draft policy as a result of those responses to the consultation. Since the report was drafted, the Fire Service and Hertfordshire Modern Slavery Partnership have responded saying that they're happy with the approach we're taking and the wording that is suggested in the amendments. At paragraph 3.28, there are 3 officer-suggested changes which are a result of discussions with stakeholders and members during the consultation period. These are non-substantive changes that are proposed to aid understanding and clarity without changing the principles around which the policy was drafted. Appendix J contains the proposed wording, having made all of the amendments included in the report this evening. In addition to the proposed wording for the Statement of Licensing Policy, the report contains a pool of model conditions which was circulated for consideration at the same time as the Statement of Licensing Policy. This has been attached for information only, as it's a non-statutory document, so doesn't technically require consultation to be approved and can be amended immediately should the need require. I'm happy to try and answer any questions, Chair. That's the end of my submissions.
Thank you very much. I open it to the floor. Any comments, questions, points of clarity?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a comment really regarding the submission by Little Haddam Council, I think it was. Just it seems a pity that we can't do anything more because of, I think it's case law and statutory hindrance, that we can't sort of advertise and be transparent about the planning applications, licensing applications in the same way that we do with planning applications. I just think it's important that all of us as members sort of advertise this to other members, that they should be promoting it with residents and advertising it themselves and making any licensing applications that are coming through known to as many residents as possible, so that we do what the statutory provisions can't. Obviously, we can't do that in this policy, so it's not a comment overall about the policy, just a general observation.
Chris, you're absolutely on the nail, and several members here in the room will know that I've been an advocate for some while for doing precisely that. And without wishing to beat my own drum, I spent a weekend delivering 147 letters, which was basically just the application, nothing more. No comment, but making sure that people knew. So, yeah, I think there is a member issue here. We could do more potentially to take up the slack where the law does not encourage, or in some cases permit, the authority to take those steps. There's nothing to stop the local member, providing it's done in the appropriate way. And perhaps officers could think about making themselves available to give guidance to individual members if they were to come forward and ask how they might best do it. So I think that's something we can all do. Marnie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say I was impressed by the number of responses which you received. I thought they were very, very good. And I was especially interested in the one on modern slavery. I confess that had never occurred to me, but when I read it, I thought, oh yes, this is very relevant. And so I thought that was an excellent response. Yes, I thought they were all very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally endorse that. You've stolen my thunder, because I wasn't expecting to find it. When I did, I was surprised it was there. And having read it, I realised it definitely needed to be there. So well done to officers for picking that up, bringing it forward. Given that we have, not that long ago, been in a position where we've commented negatively on the number of responses we've had to a consultation, I am encouraged. Certainly the consultation has generated at least an appropriate level of response, and that encourages me, and we can take that forward. I hope officers will go back in due course, maybe offline, and just let people who have responded know that we do appreciate that as an authority and as a committee. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to get hang of this in one day. Are we content with B and C and take them together? If so, would somebody be kind enough to propose and somebody else second? Thanks, Jeff. Can we have a seconder? David Snowden. Thank you very much. Good. Oh, right, quick vote. Show of hands, if you would. Thank you. So on to agenda item 8, which is Rosalind and Claire. Very nice to see you this evening. Claire, you produced an excellent report to us, I think back in October, but I don't think you were in the room we spared your blushes, because I don't think you were here to receive our congratulations, because it was a very, very good report, and it's nice to see you here this evening. Who is going to introduce it? Excellent, good, thank you. Carry on. We're all ears.
The licensing record point scheme has made up part of the East Herts tax policy. The licensing record point scheme has made up part of the East Herts taxi policy for many years. It allows officers to issue licensing record points to drivers who have fallen below expected standards and failed to comply with certain requirements. The current licensing record point scheme has been looked at and rewritten. This has been done to address any gaps that have been highlighted through the use of the current scheme, address any misunderstandings that were created when there was a range of points available for breaches, and to include items that are not covered by the legislation but are important standards that licence holders should be maintaining. As such, I would ask that the draft licensing record point scheme be considered by the licensing committee and that officers are instructed to carry out an 8-week public consultation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. I must say, I was surprised at how comprehensive the list is. If I was a taxi driver, I think I'd be rather nervous and a tad paranoid. I've probably done 3 of those today, and I don't have anything to do with the taxi trade. I must admit, failure to carry an approved fire extinguisher is 6 to 12. Failure to carry an approved first aid kit is 3. Yeah, I'm not quite sure we got the proportionality right on both of those, but never mind. I'd much rather they turned up with a first aid kit than a fire extinguisher. But no, excellent. It was an eye-opener to me. I'm sure it was for other failure to adhere to the dress code. That's a dangerous place to go. But Jen, over to you, members. Any thoughts, any comments?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 points. Page 226, which is number 13 and 14, which is about the driver in possession of illegal drugs when in charge of a licensed vehicle, and driver found under the influence of drink and/or drugs while in charge of any vehicle. And I'm trying to see the connection there in terms of if that's obviously it's a prosecutable offence and it's a criminal offence. So that would also appear in the other guidance for when drivers get prosecuted and when they get criminal offences. So in what circumstance are these points instead of going under that guidance, and how does that work?
The points can be used in addition to other things we have. So we can also do a prosecution and we can also issue points. So it can be used both. They can be used hand in hand.
In this case, that would be a police matter, however, wouldn't it? So if this isn't enough to get a police conviction, what standard of proof are we using to say this is 12 points?
Perhaps I can come in there, but obviously the standard of proof we work to is not the standard of proof that the
It is, but
CPS
it sort of crosses a line for me. It's like because you haven't got the other offences there, for example, of common assault or AVH, and it's the police's territory to deal with that. So if it's not enough for a conviction for them, then we're in that territory of almost interfering with their process potentially. So I'm just wondering how that crossover works.
So if they were charged, that would fall under the suitability policy. So this may be, as you say, police intelligence. So it could fulfil our level of evidence. So it would be like a balance of probabilities, but the police may no further action it. So it leaves us the option of issuing points, for example, if there's mitigating circumstances as to why they had it on them, rather than revoking or suspending. So it's just another string to that same bow, so it gives us a wider range. If members think the overlap's inappropriate, then we can take those out for the consultation and leave it in the suitability policy. So it's for members' consideration.
It does strike me as a little bit sort of awkward and difficult to do that, and quite, because the police should be disclosing to you anyway if there's anything that is short of a conviction. So that would also go through that other route, wouldn't it? The other thing was I was wondering why we're giving a penalty for late renewals, which is page 228, number 31. I'm not sure how that affects the public and safety for someone to be just late renewing it, although I may be missing something. Late renewing an application for their licence, I'm presuming, or late renewing their licence.
If someone hasn't put in an application form and their licence expires, that licence is gone. They then can't put in an application to renew a licence because the licence has expired. So they can't, once that licence is gone, it's gone. So the reason for the late application renewal is because it saves us a lot of work in chasing them. Because their licence is expired, we've got to get their plates back. Their licence is back, we've got to ensure that they know that they're not able to drive because they haven't got a valid licence. If that application is in place, that renewal application is in place, then they have a continual licence.
So does that mean that the offence is effectively having a licence that hasn't been returned rather than a late renewal application? Is that the problem with that?
It's just to encourage the drivers to renew on time.
I'm just, and it's a personal view, I don't think it's appropriate to penalise someone as if they're not able to do a job because they're late with providing some paperwork, because it's about public safety, not about whether they can produce paperwork or not, and not about convenience for the licensing authority, in my view.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Chris, but maybe it's something we could take up offline if you feel strongly about it, not necessarily one for here.
The final question would be on page 235, numbers 81 and 82. I'm just wondering, do we ever prosecute under the Equality Act for those offences?
You can draw my attention to that again.
Sorry, page 235, numbers 81 and 82. It's to do with carriage of a disabled person or failure to, or charging extra for a disabled person.
If the evidence was there, we'd be likely to prosecute or revoke or suspend. It's the whole range of, but yes, we would prosecute if we had the evidence.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Cogent as ever. Members. Jeff.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wondered with these new points system, well, not system, but the new allocation of points, how does it compare sort of nationally, or even with our immediate neighbours, our friends in Essex? I know we've just wondered how it compares. Are we ahead of the game? Are we a bit more stricter? Are we leading the way, or are we catching up with the rest nationally? Just wondered, really.
Point schemes nationally, it's a real cross-section, so lots of authorities don't have them. The recent DFT standards said that it's a good way of monitoring and maintaining standards, so I think more people will move in that direction. We've been approached by Stevenage, who wanted to see, once we'd reviewed our scheme, whether they could introduce a similar scheme. So I don't think we're any stricter than anyone with the amount of points we issue. There's not really a direct comparison, so we may go 246, someone else may go 369, and it's 12 is our maximum.
Yeah.
Other people have different figures for their maximum. So I don't think it's overly onerous. We're not being desperately strict, and we've had a point scheme for years, so I don't think it's not really ahead of the game. It's just we're revising ours so that it's more usable and more useful for the purpose we initially had it implemented for.
Good.
So that's not really answered your question.
No,
but
but I think reading between the lines then, it looks like we're probably a little bit ahead of the game, and other authorities are watching how this policy comes through to possibly adapt theirs. So that's good to know. Yeah. Thanks.
Good point. Chris, on reflection, the point that I suggested you might take up offline, do you have a proposal to modify or amend that at this stage, or if you have a discussion with officers offline, you can feel free to bring something forward?
I could see that there's an issue regarding those who do not attempt to renew in time, and therefore their documentation is not valid any longer, and they're running around with a licence or a plate they shouldn't have. But to me, just the fact they're late could be all sorts of reasons, and it doesn't actually impinge on anybody else, apart from obviously administratively wise. And I don't think that's enough personally to make that into a. So I suppose my proposal would be to remove that and just use it as, instead, have that offence as merely about late return of plates or licence, or failure to return plates or licence.
If they're returning plates or licence, there's no point in putting points on it.
Well, that's true.
So,
but they may wish to come back, I suppose. If they renew late, then they might be returning their plates late. to renew late.
Yeah, historically, I'm aware that there's been a problem with, and a lot of officer time has been spent chasing people around, and you know, from my point of view, 2 points is just really a slap wrist, and don't do it again. So I'm not uncomfortable with it. But you know, if you've got a proposal, I'm sure the committee would listen to it.
Chair, could I come back just really briefly on that point? In all of these circumstances, each case is considered on its own merits, and there is an appeal. We've built that into this new policy. It wasn't particularly well written in the initial policy, but we've built in the appeal process. So were we to give someone these points, they could write in and go, for example, my father had died, there was a pandemic and I was in another country and my flights were cancelled. So it isn't an automatic points that there is no appeal to. So that would be considered at the time.
Yeah,
so
I appreciate that. I read that.
Policy.
That is welcome. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. Looking around, any more thoughts, comments, contributions? No? In that case, can I invite you to go to page 205, where we'll see again a couple of recommendations. 2, members review and comment on the proposals detailed in this report, which we have done. I'm sure we'll agree. And officers are asked to go and carry out an 8-week public consultation regarding the proposed changes. Are we all content? If so, would one of you be kind enough to propose? Ken Crofton. And a seconder? David Snowden. Thank you very much. Can we have a show of hands, please, to support that? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Good. Excellent. Rosalind, you're not on the remainder of the business. We would not be disappointed if you would have other more important things to do at this stage. But we won't be very many minutes, I'm sure. But if you do wish to retire at this point, feel free. Yeah, it's an excellent piece of work. We thank you. So, on to item 9. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. I'm putting forward today the Licensing Annual Report. This is an end-of-year report, so you would have obviously been aware of what's gone on over the last 12 months. I'm not going to read the report word for word, so I'll just touch on a couple of points that I'd like to just highlight. So the work over the last 12 months that's been carried out by the licensing and enforcement team, there has been a reduction in some of the figures, and obviously that's due to the COVID pandemic with licensed premises being closed, so obviously people aren't putting in applications. The other point that I just wanted to raise is the documentation that we've been chasing for taxi drivers that has been out of date. Obviously the DFT has sort of brought forward the DBS update service, so we should see a further decline in drivers not producing documents, actually producing documents to us, because we won't be chasing for their basic disclosures going forward. So that's something that will help with those figures. And also over the last 12 months, any driver that has not worked or they've had issues with renewals of their licences, there are actually measures in place to protect those, and there's a fast-track process for any of the drivers to sort of come forward. So we're just kind of working through those really, and just trying to get things moving from now really. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much. I was pleased to see that you've kept the taxi inspections and investigations up. Obviously other businesses slackened off, and that's presumably giving you an opportunity to do more in that area. So well done for taking that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would thank the officers for this detailed report, and I must say I'm most impressed by the amount of work that has been done and how carefully it has been done and carefully documented. So I'd like to say thank you very much. Thank you.
I have one very minor query, and I'm sure the response is very sensible, and that is on page 245 we finish with the Rush Green service station, but there was also some amendments, I think, to licences, or attempts to amend licences for the Tesco at Bishop Stortford and in Ware Road, Hertford, at more or less the same time, but they didn't make it into this report. Were they on the cusp?
Chair. I think they were on the cusp of the dates for the report, so they would have fallen just after the cut-off for this particular report. So you'll see those in the next quarter, yeah.
Yeah, so minor point, obviously, but I was curious. I thought they were about the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. No, thank you. You know, it's impressive. Thanks for bringing the figures forward so we can all have a good look at them. And keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. You can all... Yeah. Okay. So, back to page 237. Norma, please do.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure if this is the place to bring it, but I'm going to bring it anyway. I just wanted to thank licensing for what they did at the Marne Inn in Bishop Stortford. I'm closed it for 2 days because of the noise and the swearing and everything else when the England match was on. So, thank you very much.
Microphone again. Could you press the button for me? The recommendations coming forward to us are that we review and comment on the licensing activity from 2020-2021, which I think we have done more than adequately. So, again, could we have a proposer? Norma, I think you'd like to propose that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I'll propose.
Thank you. And it's seconded by our vice chairman, our new vice chairman. Well, our old vice chairman returned, resurrected, as they say. Good, excellent. Can we have a show of hands? Trust you all support that. Wonderful. I'm not being advised of any urgent business, so that is the business for this evening. And in closing, I would really like to thank our officers. They beaver away in the background. We hardly ever see them. It's a joy and a pleasure when we do, but it's a comfort to me that know that they're out there, and even in these difficult times, they have been keeping their finger on the pulse of what matters for community safety and licensing in East Herts. So, thank you very much. And with that, and your best